22 years ago, I sold Mary Kay, and I sold it for about a year and a half. But one of the things that they talk about is working as hard for you as you would for someone else. And that's the thought process I had in going, that if I were in a six-figure salaried role like I was, with full benefits and paid holidays and pension to boot, and I was going to take a chance and lean on my faith, I committed immediately that I would work as hard for me as I had for everyone else. More than 8 hours, 2 cell phones, skipping vacations, cutting out of meetings and parties to do something that's work related. And at the end of the day, that company does not belong to me. The salary that I was drawing was a fraction of the overall income that the company was making. So if I can do that for me in that same way, then I have an opportunity to build something for myself, that I'm making the decisions, I'm working hard, I see the impact, I see the outcome, I see the profit.
Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Beyond Freedom podcast. Thank you for joining. We have an amazing guest today. How are you, Jay? Are you excited for our amazing guest?
What? I'm like bursting out of my chair because I'm that excited. So, man, I can't wait to get started.
All right. Well, you guys, Dee Maddox is going to tell you about her, but we want to tell you how we met her really quick. We had a speaking engagement in Texas, and Jay and I went on an hour before her. She shows up early, and we saw the crowd gathering. There was a crowd gathering into the room to see her speak. And, we talked to her a little bit before, we changed rooms. But we said, me and Jay, we were hungry, we were tired because we spoke before her. And we said, let's stay. Let's just be the two people in the room, see what she has to say. And oh my goodness, she rocked the room. She had freebies. She had the crowd laughing. And we learned a lot from her speaking style. From there, we took some stuff away from it. We saw how she was able to connect with the audience, and it was an amazing time. So that was how we met Dee. And when we started the podcast, she was at the top of the list, like, yo, we got to get her on the podcast. So thank you for joining us, Dee. We are so excited to have you here. Why don't you tell a little bit, our audience, a little bit about your background, and we're just going to get into an amazing conversation, because every time we talk to you, it's an amazing conversation.
Good morning, Shauna. Good morning, Jay. Thank you so much for having me. I was equally delighted to see you at the conference in Texas, because every time I see people who look like me, I get excited when we're doing the same thing in the same space. So being at that conference was absolutely amazing. So you've already told the people I'm Dee Maddox, and my company is DMX Consulting, and those are my initials, not the rapper, and it really stands for Demand Excellence. And that's something that I've done over 25 years as a federal employee in the field of human resources. And why would I quit my good job to go at entrepreneurship, which is a hard road to pave? It's because people don't quit jobs, Jay and Shauna. They don't quit jobs. They quit bosses. So DMX Consulting is committed to building better bosses. And I'm doing that with personalized coaching, insightful assessments, and dynamic training, which I appreciate you two speaking to. I like to engage, and I like to interact, and I like to involve the audience so they walk away equipped with the tools to leave them more productive and more satisfied in their roles. And that's what I've committed DMX Consulting to doing. And I do that through the coaching, the keynotes, and the classroom training. So thanks for having me. Of course, I'm in Dallas, Texas, but I hail from the dirty South, and Birmingham, Alabama is where I was born and raised. And I did my undergraduate at University of Alabama, Birmingham. And then I came to your part of the woods, and I did my graduate work at George Washington. Lived there in Alexandria, across from the Yellow Line, Van Dorn Metro Station, and had 2 kiddos that are now in college, a freshman and a senior, and been married for 26 years, and just out here trying to touch the people. So thanks for having me.
That's awesome. All right,
That's
well, let's
awesome.
kick it off, Jay. Oh, that is a little bit about you, Jay. Do you have first question?
Man, well, I do have a question, but it's more of, it's almost like a joke, because I think, before we came on, we were talking about how, Shauna has little kids, and, Dee and I, we both are experiencing something that Shauna's not experiencing, which is empty nesting and, the fact that our kids are in college. And so I just wanted to shout out Dee as she's, living a new life of, no kids at home, but there's a reason why at this point in our life we met.
Yeah.
And we've met for a time that's going to make an impact in our kids. And I'm looking forward to that. So that was just my statement. But then I also have a question for you, Dee, just to kind of just jump this off, because you talked about, you know, going from working in the government, and now you're DMX Consulting. Like, how the heck did that happen? How did you decide to go into business for yourself?
Well, it was the reflection that God allowed for us during pandemic. So during pandemic, I worked from home for 2 years. And at the time, I was an analyst, but I just kept hearing the spirit whisper, like, this is not your calling. This is not what you're supposed to do, sitting behind this laptop with these numbers every day. And then because of the circumstances and the tumultuous things that were happening in the world, people were losing their lives daily to this global pandemic. And that's what really made me slow down. Like, God had the ability at any time to start us over with water or fire. And he's like, okay, I'm going to bring this little illness, this plague. I'm going to get your attention. And if you were paying attention, it was designed for us to do something differently. And that's when I realized that I needed to do something differently. I had only been an employee. So I started to study entrepreneurship, and I decided to settle on something meaningful. My name, Dee Maddox Consulting, and then I just pulled out the initials for my logo for DMX. But I realized that people usually connect with me, and I love connecting with people. And going back to what I used to do prior to becoming an analyst, I was human resources and training. And that pandemic slowdown helped me realize my purpose really was not data, it was people. And that's when I decided to launch the company.
That's
Oh
awesome.
man, that's awesome, man. So I'm gonna ask another question because Sean and I are in what we would call a boring industry, accounting and taxes. Most people are like, accounting and taxes, yuck. Now, you were doing human resources, right? That's
Yes.
just as boring. That's just as, in most cases, it's just as boring as accounting and taxes. Like, as a human resource person going into business, you
Mhm.
know, what would you say your niche is at this point? Because you, from my understanding, it doesn't seem like you're the human resource type. So what are you actually doing with human resources in your business today?
Well, human resources has a lot of facets. Everyone knows the employee relations, the labor relations, the compensation, the benefits, the salary, the discipline. The thing that always plagued me as an employee in HR were the performance issues. And that's why I say building better bosses, because employees want to be recognized, they want to be appreciated, and they want to be developed. And there's some people who get promoted to be responsible for others who just don't recognize the importance of those three key factors. So the one thing that always rubbed me the wrong way was the incorrect assessment of someone's individual performance by a boss. And I decided to focus on the performance management aspect and put the human back into human resources. So that's my niche, Jay. I want to put the human back into human resources because people really do view HR as the police. They don't view it as a place where you can go to get heard, understood, motivated, to get adaptable tools, and to be nurtured in your growth and your development. HUMAN. So that's my goal, Jay. So I don't want it to feel like the HR of old.
Nice.
Nice.
So similar to accounting human resources, a lot of times people don't come to us until there's an issue. In
Mm-hmm.
your case, maybe there's like this massive exodus out of a company and people are quitting, and then the higher ups are like, what's happening? I have an issue. And the same for us. They come to us after everything is, crashed and burned, cash flow taxes, like, save me, save me.
Right.
What would you say to your target audience about making this a priority top of the year at some point in time, and to like not wait until it's an issue per se, because that's when like preventative is always better than detective, than after the fact. What would you say to your target audience about this is just as important as making money? Because if you don't have the right people to serve your business, you don't have a business, you have a job, and that's just terrible.
Exactly. And it's funny you should use the words priority, because when you prioritize the people over the processes, you prioritize people over processes, then the profits, your area, will follow. When you take care of the people, they take care of your business. So if you have one unit or one division where there's an ongoing turnover, it's not the job, it's not the operations, it's the leader. And in that case, they're probably not a leader, they're a manager. They're focused on the tactical aspect, and they're not actually equipping the team members with what they need to be successful. And then they're using the performance review and the reward system to penalize them. And people don't want to feel that way. And that's why you have one area that is plaguing the organization. And then the manager is saying, so to your point, do you want to be a firefighter, or do you want to be a fire prevention specialist? And I'm encouraging these leaders and managers out there, let's be a fire prevention specialist. Before the fire starts, then why don't we safeguard some things and pour into the people and give them what they need in order to feel safe in their work environment and the tools they need to be successful?
Nice. Fire prevention. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's kind of like tax strategy.
Yeah.
Tax strategy is the protection around keeping more of your money,
Mhm.
right? And so, that whole prevention piece is what people have to focus on. So if you had to, just kind of look at your business from a transformative perspective, like what is it, or what do you think you bring to the table when you're working with companies, working with organizations that's actually going to help people to transform their lives, their departments, or the way they do things?
I'm bringing a mindset shift as to what they think about. Often if you've read, and I mentioned this in the training that you attended, the James Clear book that's on my shelf, Atomic Habits, one of the things that he focuses on is building better habits and breaking bad ones. A lot of the things we do, like blinking, breathing, walking around, it comes through a natural pattern. So I want to help shift the patterns of how we treat people and blindly apply the rules and standards without regarding the human element. So you may not have followed it to the letter of the law, but there may be a human reason why either you couldn't or it wasn't applicable at that particular moment. And when do we make exceptions, and do we know that we need to make exceptions? So giving those leaders the idea or the opportunity to recognize they need to shift their thought process from just blindly following the pattern of what was done before and be innovative and do things differently.
No, that's really good. Now, before we came on camera, we were talking about mindset and how mindset is, I mean, it's so critical. And, the one thing that I've been kind of like noticing in business, just in life in general, a lot of times, we as people, we like to hold on to the old stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like breaking beliefs.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about it just in the area of finances. Now, you're a different kind of coach, a different type of leader, trainer, and you're helping people break beliefs around how they deal with people. Like, so walk walk us through like that kind of process. If you were just going through a leadership training and you're helping them to get through to get to some place or get to this new identity or new mindset shift, like what's some of the key components of some of the things that you help them to understand and to do?
So I'm going to say that this is going to be really easy. And people always, and I tell the kiddos this, they ask questions that they know the answer to. So I know that Jay already knows the answer to this, Shauna, and you're leaning forward because you're waiting for me to say it because you know too. It begins with an assessment of where you are. The same thing that when I had my first tax strategy consultation with you after our meeting, it starts with an assessment of where am I now? Where do I want to be? And how do I get there? So that's something that any consultant, what you did for me when we had our discussion about my finances, and what I do for an organization when they say that they're having a problem. I don't take their word for it that the problem they have is the problem that they state. I begin with an assessment of the current circumstances. The same way that Jay says, okay, you look lovely, you sound lovely, but what we're going to need to do is get in those books. I need to, you're saying that you're keeping QuickBooks, but that sounds lovely. I need to see the data. It's the same thing with human resources. You go in and you talk to the people, you might do surveys, polls, and assessments, and find out if the diagnosed problem is the actual problem. And once you realize what the actual problem is, then you can begin to figure out where do we want to go. And so, Jay, you're saying, well, what are you using for that roadmap? I'm going to begin with studying the company the same way that you would. I'm going to look at the competitors. I'm going to look at the performance. I'm also going to look at ground zero. What are your mission, vision, and values for that organization? And are the leaders you've entrusted with your people following those three things? If you're not following the roadmap, if you don't know the mission of the organization, if you're not operating within the company values, then you're never going to achieve that vision. So I start with an assessment, and that's why I said, personalized assessments, because I need to know where you are, not where you think you are. You may think that, oh, if I pay them more, pay is very rarely a factor in employee satisfaction that's going to impact turnover. It's going to be treatment. Mm-hmm. And how are your people being treated versus how the managers think they're being treated. So doing an assessment that begins with surveys and probing questions is going to be step one. And then after you have that, communicating the findings the same way that you would. We looked into your books and this is what it says. You got too much. My husband is an audit director. He told me about a year ago, my burn and my earn just don't match. So I would do the same thing. The attitudes and the reasons why people are leaving during those exit interviews is going to help prepare you to change the behavior and to put some parameters in place to shift how people are being treated so that you don't have to continue to invest in turnover.
Nice. So I have a question. I have a question. I'm going to shift the conversation just a little bit because you are a small business owner. 3 years, you said?
Yep, 3 years.
A lot of our clients, congratulations.
Thank you.
A lot of our clients are, what'd you say?
That was the hump, waiting to get to the 3-year mark.
Yeah. So a lot of our clients are small businesses too. And you had 20, how many years in corporate?
25.
25 years in corporate. You transitioned to small business. So how do you see that what you're doing now, or when you did the reconciliation, I guess you said COVID gave you a new perspective over how things are done and what you were doing with your life. But how do you see, or how do you reconcile the vision and mission for your life and how you're supposed to impact people's lives in the world in your current business, like what you're doing in your business now? Because I'm assuming you had a conversation with self. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this fully, of course you needed it because it gives you years of experience and background to enable you to do what you do now. But as you made the shift, how is your small business showing you, telling you that this is either more in alignment or the next season of alignment to really, leave your mark on this world?
So when I was alone in this room for pandemic working for 2 years, 2 years I was out of the office. I was isolated. I had my work computer here at home. We couldn't go in physically. And being alone in this room, I started to examine my impact, interestingly enough. And I realized I had tricked myself into thinking that I was having an impact that I wasn't actually having. I was an analyst and I was doing data, I was doing analysis, I was doing briefs, but the most fulfilling portion of my job came from the people. People would seek me out to solve problems that were completely unrelated to my actual job. They would come to me. And so then when I was here in this room without the people, and it felt lonely and I felt like I was being swallowed, and I realized I was missing something, I was missing the people. Well, I was getting my fix of the people because I was volunteering in the community and I was working hospitality in my place of worship where I was getting a fix on the people, right? I was always seeking out an opportunity to be in contact with the people. And now that I've started the business, what I've discovered is all of my training results, they talk about the engagement and the inclusion and the interactivity, and that it's I've had more than one person write it was the best training that they've ever had. And I don't think it was the best training because of the subject matter, because I teach a lot of different subjects. I think it's because of the interaction and because of the impact that I make them participate and they want to be included in the process, which is something we don't always get the opportunity to do. So that after survey after survey after survey of people saying great training, great energy, great delivery, then I realized that it was my connection with the people, which I've always had just a passion for people. And I've always felt like people connect with me and I connect with them. I'm coming out of the grocery store. My husband say, "Oh, I didn't know you met someone." I was like, "Oh no, I met her in produce. We just walked through the store and checked out together." Like I always meet people on the elevator, in the airport. So I was destined to use what I wasn't using in a more effective way. And I realized that when I was isolated in pandemic, that not only was that what made my heart sing, that other people were telling other people, and people was like, "You know everyone." I was like, "I don't really, but if they feel like they want to know me, or I left them feeling like they know me, then I've done what I set out to do, to make them feel welcome, included, and seen."
Wow.
Wow, wow.
That's
Okay,
we saw
okay.
that too, Jake. Just real quick, we saw that
Yeah.
too. You drew us in. We didn't even know what you were doing. It's like you have little superpowers. That's what made us stay when you were about to talk. Anyway, go ahead.
No, so I'm just going to kind of carry that through because I want to make sure people hear and understand what D is saying and what D is using. So everybody has a skill. So everybody goes to school, we work a job, and that's the thing we're doing. Yeah, it's like, oh, and you might do it really well. But then everybody has this other thing about you that you can't really see. It's not like you can say, oh, I can see that D is this, see that this is inside of D. We can just feel what's inside of D. So
Mm,
what happens is she takes the thing, unbeknownst to her, the thing that is her, and she just says, oh, look at that. This is what people really like. They like D. They like what's inside of D, not necessarily what's on the outside of D. Like it's like when you look at a tree, you say, well, I know that the tree is an orange tree, not just because of it's producing the fruit, because it was an orange tree when it went in the ground. So now Dee's using herself in her field. Now, this is interesting because I don't know that most of the time we don't talk about gifts and superpowers. Like I think this is the first time mentioning gifts and superpowers on this podcast. And D, I don't, well, I think you know now that you're using a superpower. And this superpower is what's going to be the thing that takes you all the way through. Now, here's the thing, because someone else is going to listen to the podcast and watch the podcast, and then like, well, I don't know if I have a superpower. So I don't know that you can do this, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway. If
Okay.
someone had to locate, if someone had to locate the power within them, what it is that might be special about them, think of it from your perspective. How would you talk to them and what would you say to them about that or discovering of that superpower?
So I think the superpower is very closely related to your passion and your purpose. And recently I gave a talk at a community church to a breakfast leadership group. And that's what I talked about. And I think it's what you probably haven't taken an inventory of, but it's something that happens, to your point, Jay, naturally, and it happens in a reoccurring fashion. And it's the thing that may not be the thing that you were educated for or that you have the most experience in, but it's the thing that you often find yourself doing and or you often find yourself commenting on. And it happens in a way that's natural and it's a recurring pattern. So for me, a recurring pattern was we moved here and I joined a church and I had not decided on what I was going to do to serve. and they had a ministry fair. I didn't go to the ministry fair. After the ministry fair, I got an email saying, "You've been invited to First Touch." So I wrote back and I said, "I did not apply." And she said, "This ministry does not have an application process. We saw you, we chose you. We're offering you this appointment to First Touch." And the definition of First Touch was I was going to be responsible to touch first time guests while they were making their decision about joining the body. So that was at the first church. We changed churches subsequently because the kids were growing and our needs changed, and we wanted a more robust children's program. We went to a new church, and an email shows up, and the email says, "We welcome you to hospitality." And I told my husband, I said, "I think they got me mixed up with that other lady, Dee." I said, "But she sings." I was like, why would they send me her email?" He says, "Well, it could be that anyone who spends as much time in the lobby saying good morning and greeting folks, like they think my husband thinks he's funny, like you're at Walmart saying good morning to everybody." He says, "They probably decided they need to give you a badge." And I said, "Well, doesn't everybody?" He goes, "No, they don't." So we moved from Birmingham to Washington, D.C. We're on the metro. We went to the airport. We were on the metro, and I'm walking around, never been to D.C. before. And I'm excited to be in the big city. And I'm saying hello, and I'm waving at people. And he goes, "Stop it." And I said, "What am I doing?" He goes, "Making people think you're crazy. Don't you notice they're averting their eyes and they're not waving back?" And he says, "Just because you're happy and excited, you cannot expect these strangers to feel the same way." And I was perplexed that he was suggesting that I was doing something wrong. So anyway, in my job as an analyst, I continue to volunteer. I made up a group called the Happiness Squad, and we would celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and births of babies. Completely not a job, but completely something that people volunteered to bring stuff to the potluck for whatever occasion I said we were celebrating. And my boss reaped the benefits because I was keeping people happy with this fake happy squad that I had created just to get away from my desk as an analyst because I needed to be connected to people. So things you do naturally that people recognize and ask you to do without you volunteering are going to be things that are related to your superpower. So if you're a person who says, "I'm an accountant," but people are always saying, "Shauna, when are you going to bake your next pound cake?" And you're saying, "Girl, this is tax season. I cannot bake right now." Then you might have a gift in your baking that people are excited about and they look forward to and they're asking after it. So I think the thing that people identify for you that they naturally ask for is going to be one of those things that you do, maybe even unbeknownst to you, that touches people in a way that's unexpected.
That's
That's
good.
good. A lot of
That's
people are
good.
going to catch that because that is a reoccurring, you know, everyone wants a business now. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Everyone's trying to figure it out. And that right there is just, and then you could figure it out and still spend a little time fine tuning
Mhm.
what you're going to do with that superpower and gift. Like, you know, like dialing in. I mean, we spent months trying to figure out, okay, we do tax strategy. We could do bookkeeping, but we could do this, but where does our superpower, where do we connect best and how? So yeah, that's gonna touch a lot of people. I have another question, unless Jay. Okay, so we talk a lot about finances,
Mhm.
right? And we kind of demonstrate to people how a 9 to 5, which you were very successful in that season of life for 25 years, can only get you but so far
Mhm.
because you can only ever be paid what they tell you you can be paid. And that serves a season of life, like we've all done it.
Yes.
However, I'm curious, as in your now entrepreneur, full-on entrepreneurial season, and you are just going, going, going. I mean, it sounds like from a couple months ago we talked, you've gone even further. How do you envision this um financially? We talked about the purpose, like you've dialed that in really, really good. But when it comes to taking your earning income and your pricing and your financial. We're going to ask you a question later about freedom, but how does that compare and how excited are you to see the vision of where this is going to take you? Now you're in a situation where people are going to pay you what you say they should versus what they say they will. Talk a little bit about that.
I think what you're saying is something that I thought in my mind. Like you said, you may know it, but executing it is very different. So when you say, like, I'm going to start a business because if I've been successful in contributing to the greater good, I'm a part of an organization and they were paying me this salary because my contribution was worth that to them. 22 years ago, I sold Mary Kay, and I sold it for about a year and a half. But one of the things that they talk about is working as hard for you as you would for someone else. And that's the thought process I had in going, that if I were in a six-figure salaried role like I was, with full benefits and paid holidays and pension to boot, and I was going to take a chance and lean on my faith and do it for me, I committed immediately that I would work as hard for me as I had for everyone else. More than 8 hours, two cell phones, skipping vacations, cutting out of meetings and parties to do something that's work related. And at the end of the day, that company does not belong to me. That full profit does not belong to me. The salary that I was drawing was a fraction of the overall income that the company was making. So if I can do that for me in that same way, then I have an opportunity to build something for myself, that I'm making the decisions, I'm working hard, I see the impact, I see the outcome, I see the profit. And then learning along the way that other people that do it, and everyone that you know that's in business, they're not doing it with just one thing. Like within an organization, you have multiple units and functions. Well, as an entrepreneur, I see this as multiple units and functions. I'm going to need multiple streams of income, not just corporate training. At some point, I just came back from Denver. There were largely product-based companies. So products, services, books, affiliate deals. The layers of business are more than, it's not singular, it's tiered, right? You got to have multiple levels in order to do anything. And we know that because we participated in it. But when you start doing it for yourself, it looks very different, but it's really the same.
That was so good. If
Yeah,
you
that
do
was good.
a fraction, I mean, you do so much for others. How much more could and should we do for ourselves?
The same. And you don't start really recognizing that or capitalizing on it or monetizing it, as we like to say, with all these social media influencers, until we make the investment. We have to make
Mm.
the investment. So if I want Jay and Shauna to save me a certain amount of money, and then Jay would say to me, well, Dee, if you want to save this amount of money on your business, you're going to have to spend X amount of dollars for our expertise in order to get you to that savings where you're pocketing more of your money. And when you're pocketing more of your money, then you can afford our services, or you position your company so that you can invest in those other layers and tiers that you want to develop. You'll have the investment capital, and will help you identify the strategies that are going to position you to do the next phase. That's where I need your expertise.
That's so good.
You know, I'm glad you brought up pricing and money, finances. Um, and then you talked a little bit about being an employee and working hard for them, and now you got to work hard for yourself. So what I'm seeing is there's a gap. There's a gap between the employee thinking and the entrepreneurial way of thinking. And I'm gonna ask you to just kind of like walk someone through like that gap, that the decision to jump through, to jump over, to jump around, like, because to go from making $100,000 as an employee to making 250, and above, and $100 million in business, what I'm seeing for a lot of entrepreneurs is it's almost like an impossibility, right? So, but we talked about mindset. So if there was a mindset hack or shift that you could say, hey guys, this might help get you through or get you over this jump. I want you to think real quick about how you could, especially with your understanding of people, your understanding of even your own successes and jumping over something that you may have not seen possible. Like, how could someone jump over from being an employee into being an entrepreneur?
Well, there's one thing that you have to do in addition to the mindset shift, and that's where strategy comes into play. You have to have a plan. It's not something that you can do without a plan. You have to know the desired outcome and then you have to plan for it. So to go from dual income family or household to say, and Jay and I talked about it because we've been in the marriage game the same amount of time with these college age kids, having a dual income family and then Jay saying, I'm the man of the house and I'm responsible for these other people. If I'm going to do this for me, I've got to do it at a certain level to manage my responsibilities. Well, the same for me as the wife. I've been the wife, but I've also been able to contribute at a certain level in our family. Having a plan that's going to allow me to rip off the band-aid and remove the regular cadence of a biweekly paycheck to go into new payment terms of net 30 or net 45 or quarterly or contract renewals, and you're at will just like any other vendor. It can be canceled at any time. So making a plan for, and I said it earlier as a joke but not a joke, your burn and your earn, you have to look at how much you're bringing in and how much you're spending out. And if you don't have a plan on how you're going to create money making activity that's going to give you what you need, then you're not going to be successful. And I did read a book once called Smarter Starting, and she said that while you're working on building up to that, you may get a smaller supplemental job as you're working the business with the mindset of not like an employee, I need this job because this is going to be my end all, but while you're working your business, you're putting something in the coffers to keep the lights on. Now, that wasn't the case with me because I am married, but I still had a plan and I had to look at how much is it going to cost me and how much am I bringing in and what am I going to do to generate more business for myself? What kind of leads am I going to make? Am I going to continue subscriptions and streaming and magazines and clothing boxes and all the other foolishness that I had coming to the house when I had a regular income? You start to streamline your spending and you focus more on your earning, is the bottom line. And it has to be planned. It's not something that you just do willy-nilly. It begins with a plan, taking a very diagnostic look at how much my bills are and how much I need to make to cover them, and then everything else is gravy. And if you're not getting that and you're still building the business, you may have to supplement. It's the reality of things. It doesn't mean you're giving up on your dream. It just means you're being realistic and you're doing what you need to do until you get to the level where your cash flow can sustain yourself, your lifestyle, and your business.
Cool,
That's
cool. So if I was an employee, basically what Dee is saying, look, you make a plan, right? You have to make a plan because if you had a lifestyle, then you probably not, you probably can't pull the Band-Aid off like as soon as you have the idea because you want to have a plan for where you want to go. And then along the way, you might have to like supplement you because you never know. Like, because I remember being in the season where in 2008 when the real estate market collapsed and I had a mortgage company and I had the accounting business and the accounting business was just like like I just made a little bit of money, but then the mortgage business, I was making a lot of money and then that just went away overnight. So it was almost like, oh my goodness, now I had to supplement. And so I did some stuff that, I'd be like, man, it wasn't pretty, right? It wasn't pretty, but you know what? I got through it. So Dee is telling an absolute truth because I can tell you that I lived through something like that. Um, so Dee is now 3 years in. She's 3 years in, and I want you to kind of look at these 3 years and now look at where you are today, but then look at okay, if there was one shift that you had to make or one way of thinking that you had to change so that you can start moving faster, what would you tell the listener that is the one thing that you had to change? If like now that you know it, what is it?
Can I,
I
sorry, before you answer, can I just, because I had a similar question, and I just want to say a word just so that you can potentially address it, is fear.
oh yeah.
Because because I feel like he was touching on it, but I just wanted to say that.
That is, I would say that the fear is what was holding me back from charging what I knew that I was worth. So when I decided to start the business, I knew that I had the skills and experience to do the business. I knew that I had a way with people and people liked me. I was afraid to ask for my worth. I was not leaning into being willing to do what I had already. I had gone to classes, webinars, done coaching where everyone was saying, there's one guy in particular who has a branding podcast that he does every morning at 6:30 a.m. And he said that if you want to be a millionaire, that you're not going to get there with $1.99 and $9.99 and $19.99. He said, how much faster can you arrive if you're charging $999 for your services? And he says, and it's like a bottle of water. In the Walgreens, it's $1. In the airport, it's $5. So it's about location and pricing. And even knowing all of that, there was something that was still holding me back from being willing to say, I need you to pay me for this amount. And then fast forward, I met some fine people who said, you've got the experience. Why aren't you charging for the experience? I.e. Jay, i.e. Shauna, like you seem like you're commanding the room. You should command a certain dollar amount. And if you have certain financial goals, and then ding, 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 it was ringing in my head, that podcast that I'd heard him say that, then why aren't you charging this installment to reach those goals? Because if you keep playing it safe, and if I charge, like, I'm offering this sale price, this bargain basement, I'm over here in the Walmart when I much rather be at the Target or in the Market Street or the Sprouts, right? People will go and they'll pay for the quality and they'll pay for the experience. So if you have that quality and that experience, then why are you offering bargain basement prices? You're never going to reach your full potential. And you're certainly not going to reach your financial goals. So Jay asked the question as politely and professionally as he could, without crushing my little dreams, to say, like, why are you doing this? He goes, you have a product, the product is in demand, and I have an MBA. Like, he was saying this stuff, and I'm sitting there like, I think I knew this, but why was I, to Shauna's point, afraid to capitalize on it? It was that. It was the fear. So I'd taken the leap, and he came along at just the right time, because of those 3 years, I launched the business in 21. I didn't quit my day job until 22. So full-time entrepreneurship, March 1st was my 2 years. So I spent a year studying and setting up structure, and then 2 years I've been working it. And this was the year that I was supposed to really hit my goals to fully double or replace my salary. And Jay asked a very slick question. He says, how are you going to do that if you're not paying yourself properly? Now, I'm HR, compensation. I was saying, like, okay, it's 2,082 hours per work year. Like, I mean, so even just going back into my old analytical role, if I were to roll back my old salary, put the number of work years in it per hour, Jay, I was saying to myself, just statistically speaking, I'm robbing myself. So it was the fear, Shauna. It was the fear, and I needed an external perspective. Just last week, I did a corporate training on problem solving. There's fixed problems and directional problems. Fixed problems have a known solution. Directional problems have a goal and objective. I know my goal and objective based on my 2024 earning goals, but the solutions that I was putting into place based on the number of work hours per year, based on the amount of work that's being done, Jay, I was not setting myself up for success. And Shauna, it was the fear that was holding me back. I was afraid of not having customers for charging too much, even though I knew, based on all of the things about entrepreneurship and expansion and growth, I knew that if they can't afford my price, then they're not my customer. But I was afraid to put that into execution. So thank
Wow,
you,
that
Jay, for
was
asking a hard question.
wow. That was now, yeah, that was really, really,
Gonna help a
I'm
lot.
talking about that's very helpful because I don't know well, most people have to look fear in the face at some point, right?
Mhm,
Because really fear shows up like I can like feel the little tingly thingies. Fear shows up right when you should do something.
mhm,
That's
mhm,
when it shows up. It's like, oh, you should do that. But for some reason, we've been told you shouldn't do it. So for anybody listening, what Dee is saying is that, hey, she would get ready to do something and then she wouldn't do it out of fear. When really what fear is just, oh, that's what I should do. Like I should charge them what I'm thinking I should charge at not what I'm thinking they're thinking, which in essence, I talk to business owners. Obviously, I talk to business owners all the time. How much you charging? You know, they tell me and they'll give me their reasons behind the price. I'm just like, oh, really? So how much you gonna make this year? And here's what's interesting, D. Everybody has the same goal. How could everybody have the exact same goal? I just want to make 100,000 this year. You do? That's it? Why would you only want to make 100,000 this year? You know what I'm saying? Like want has nothing to do with whether you can get there or not. It has everything to do with the first thing is want. Like we have a coach that says, hey, if the price don't make you smile, you got the wrong price.
Yeah.
So D figured out, and I'm not listening. I can't take credit for anything because really at the end of the day, if something comes out of my mouth, it's a gift to you because my gift is my mouth. That's what it is. I have a way of talking to people. And it's so interesting because I didn't know what my gift were. I was like, I think this is my gift. No, that's not your gift. It's the fact that, I can ask a question, I can talk and people, because I don't know, someone said that, oh, your tone of your voice was certain. It just drew me in. I was like, oh, I can't hear it except hear it. I don't know what it is. I'm with it all day long. So D figured it out. It's fear. So if a person is in business, you're new, you've been in there 3-4 years, or even longer, this happens to people. D just told you it's fear. So okay, so now D is the follow-up. Now that you know, then how are you looking at your finances? Now, how are you looking at your goals? Like what's changed since then? Since now that you know that it was fear that was literally stopping you. Now what's going to happen as a result? Let the people know where you're headed now as a result of breaking through that.
Well, I'm an old Baptist girl, and I'm going to say, we do what you say, govern yourselves accordingly. Now that I have shaken off and broken the shackles of fear and leaned into what I'm actually worth, I've been capable of confidently asking for what I believe I should be paid in a way that when I do the work, to your point, Jay, that I feel happy about the price that I'm charging for the amount of work that I need to put in to produce the product. Because I was putting in the same amount of work before for a lower rate and feeling good about the work, but not being compensated accordingly. And then what I was discovering is because I was trying to think of what they wanted to hear instead of what I wanted to hear, that was going to position me to be more competitive in the market, to charge exactly what my peers were charging, that was going to position me in a place to reach my financial goals, that was going to allow me to build a legacy for my children and to grow my company. The rates that I was using were not going to do that. So once I shook off the fear, and it's just like anything else, it's the first time that it's successful that emboldens you and empowers you to do it again and again, and you have a new position of launch. So I'm not operating from that place back there where I used to be. I'm now on first base. So I see the home run happening because I'm on first base. So once you have the first success, then it positions you and empowers you to keep going. So now I'm asking for the right amount and I'm using a formula. And I'm not afraid of the fact that not everyone is going to be my customer and not everyone will be able to afford my service. I don't go to Bergdorf's yet, Barney's yet. But what I'm saying is when I have the money, then I'll walk in confidently because I know that I can afford that. So if you can't afford to work with me, then I understand and I accept that. And if I know someone who does fit within your budget, I might even give you a referral, but I'm not going to change who I am and how I offer because the amount of preparation and the years of experience that I have are worth every penny. And I now realize that the reason why I was getting the offers was people are business people. It makes perfect sense to get the best deal that you can. If I can get something that's worth $25,000, and if I can get it for five, then why not? That makes me a smart person.
That's good.
Wow.
I love
Ooh,
it. I
5,000,
can't wait.
25,000.
So 3 years in, I can't wait to see what 3 more years looks like, D.
Oh, Shauna, we talked about this. I
Okay.
mean, we talked about it.
Yeah. What is 3 years? 5 years? Yeah, I think did we talk about retirement or what that
Yeah,
looks
we
like? I
did. We
think it's
talked about
a
retirement from this side. It's a very different look from the 25 years that I spent. It's a different rate of return, right? Like I poured 25 years into someone else's thing, and now I'm pouring into my own thing. And if nothing else, regardless of financial gain, it's the fulfillment and the experience of doing something that I'm completely in control of and that I can immediately see the impact. And I feel such joy in knowing that. A lady wrote on a survey recently, went to a military installation. She said I was the best trainer she'd had in 17 years. She put that in writing in the open comments. And in the federal government, and it was a government, I was doing a government subcontract, you have multiple mandatory trainings per year. So if I were to think of the number of trainings she's probably had in her 17-year career, and for her to write in the open comments that I was one of the best trainers she had in 17 years was a huge boost.
Think of
So you
how,
see the immediate impact.
yeah. Well, I don't know how much time we have left, but we love to ask 2 questions. So let's get one of them in before we wrap up. Is what is the most transformational or favorite book that you have in your library?
Hmm.
Most transformational, favorite
So my
book you
favorite
recommend?
book is Who Moved My Cheese? And I've started to talk about it a lot about what to do when you find yourself in a cheeseless situation. Do you contemplate staying in that cheeseless situation and hope that new cheese is going to miraculously appear, whether it's a job or a relationship or transportation or goals? Or do you go in search of new cheese and make that cheese appear? Because you already have secured the cheese once before. What's stopping you from doing it again? So it's how we handle and deal with change, whether we go after it or whether we become stagnant and paralyzed by the discussion of what happened to it or just going after it again. So Who Moved My Cheese? I
I
mean,
think
second to the Bible, of course.
I think
I
one of
was
my
wondering.
corporate
Yeah.
jobs, they made us read that, and I was like in my 20s. I was like, what is this? I need to read it again because I remember it, but I don't remember it in this season of life. Um, were you gonna say something, Jay?
Hmm.
Okay. Well, how much time do we have left? Do we ask our last question, or we'll give you runway to answer? It's time for our last question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as you know, we are the Beyond Freedom podcast, the Beyond Freedom Financial Tax Strategist. And this phrase gets confused with financial freedom, but we are beyond freedom. So if you think about that phrase and how we kind of twisted it a little bit, when you hear those words, what does beyond freedom mean to you?
Beyond freedom. Well, during our preparation discussion for today, um, Jay and I were talking about all of the innovations that we've experienced in this lifetime and how they continue to happen. Um, Thinking about certain cultures and certain restrictions and constraints or um, political things that bind us. When you say beyond freedom, anything that goes beyond, it goes past it to me. So you're saying that you switched the words beyond freedom, financial. If you think about going beyond the freedom, for example, of being an entrepreneur, that's beyond the constraints of doing what someone else wants me to do when they want me to do it and telling me what to charge and where to go. So when you say beyond freedom, I'm going beyond all of the constraints or all of the structure that the freedom might provide. So freedom means you're free to do it. But if you go even beyond what you're free to do, but you're going beyond that into areas that you might not have even known. I watched a small snippet on social media this weekend, and Will Smith said that when you have enough money to go and buy everything you want to buy, and then you realize that happiness is not associated with any of it after you've bought it all, that it's internal, that no amount of money and no amount of things is going to create that for you. So when you go beyond freedom, you have everything that you want. And it's everything. You're going beyond just the ability, but you're going beyond the money, you're going beyond the decisions, you're going beyond any constraints at all. So when you go beyond freedom, it's limitless. I think of infinity. So you're going beyond freedom.
Mm, I love
To
it.
infinity and beyond.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. That was, you know, we asked that question to everybody as the final question, and it's empowering with every answer that we get. Every answer is different. Every answer is touching this beyond, and just your answer just takes us even further into what we know about this freedom and this beyond. And I'm just thankful that you were able to come on today and just kind of talk with us, share with us your, you know, snippets of your life, your, you know, your trip through entrepreneurship, man. So excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you both. And I can't thank you enough for being forward and welcoming and interactive, because after you finished your session, we were out there on the road, you're traveling, you're away from home. And like you said, you guys were tired and hungry, but just having you in that room meant the world, that you chose as practitioners and professionals to stay and to be supportive. And we didn't know each other. So to feel that type of camaraderie and support from fellow practitioners was amazing. And I want to say thank you for your time today, and thank you for embracing me and supporting me, and thank you for your financial advice. And I'm looking forward to our future with Beyond Freedom Financial.
Mm, I love it. What an amazing wrap up. Like, we're done. We have nothing else to say. Do you wrap this up?
Absolutely. Wow, wow. So another podcast in the books, guys. We just happy that Dee Maddox was here, DMX Consulting. Before we jump, Dee, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Well, thank you for asking, Jay. So the company, dmaddoxconsulting.com, is my webpage. That's my first name and last name and the full word consulting. And because it stands for Demand Excellence to Achieve Success, you can find me on social at DMX Consulting on Instagram and Facebook. DMX, Demand Excellence, where we build better bosses through assessments, coaching, and training. So check me out, follow, like, share, and you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome, awesome. We'll make sure all those links are in the notes and the description of this podcast. But today, that's a wrap, guys, of the Beyond Freedom podcast. Jay Moore, the healthy accountant, Shauna Bell, the Freedom CPA, signing off today. And we look forward to seeing you back here on the next Beyond Freedom podcast. God bless. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.